Welcome to the, holy cow, the July 2026. Welcome to H2, everybody. Start working on your Christmas list because it's going to be here before you know it. But the July B2B Growth Show, we're glad that you're here. Let us know where you're watching in from. Say hi to us in the chat. Let us know what the temperature is. Like I said, our special guest, John's got us all beat. He's in San Francisco at mid 60s today. Lauren and I are in the top high 80s, probably going to be in the 90s by the time the show is over. But more importantly, we'd love to know, why are you here today? So what is it about AI and B2B marketing, and specifically about AI to help improve our buyer experiences that you're hoping to learn? We would love to see that. And so just so you guys know, if you're a newbie here, we do have an agenda that we will share with you. It'll get dropped in the comments a few times today. Be sure to grab a copy of that because it has not only the topics that we're going to cover today, but it also has links to a lot of great resources that you can use and reference to after the show is over today. And so be sure to grab that. It'll be shared, like I said, a couple of times in the comments. But you can grab that and just follow along. I'm not going to really share my screen that much and pull up the agenda, but if you want to follow along and kind of see where we are, that would be great. Now, I do have to say our guest today is kind of a special guest in many reasons. John obviously is a good friend of mine. Navu is the company that he works for. They're a partner of ours. We're also a customer of theirs. But John has the unique distinction of being our very first three-peat guest. And he's a three-peat guest because the topic that we're going to cover today, I think, is one of the most important topics that B2B companies can talk about or think about. And that is, how do we improve the buyer experience on our website? How do we remove friction from our website? And in the old world of marketing, we know that we love to add friction as a way to help us marketers prove that we're doing our job. But John's going to try to break that apart for us today. So without further ado, John, welcome to the show. Glad to have you, Mr. Three-Peat.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm really always happy to talk to you. And if we can get the chance to record it, all the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's always a fun thing. And then, gosh, we'll get to see each other's faces as clips on LinkedIn in the future too. And that's always fun. So one of the things that we do is we're also, obviously here on Riverside, for those of you that are joining us in the webinar format. And we've got Lauren, who's going to be moderating today. You want to say hi, Lauren?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Yep. And then also for those of you that are joining us on the LinkedIn stream, I wish I could see you and I wish I could see your comments, but it's just not possible with the way this is set up. But no worries for you guys, because we have Jessica Silver over on LinkedIn. So she's manning our chat there. And so if you guys have questions that we need that are important for us to answer, we'll get those messages. We'll make sure that we answer those as we go through this session today. Now, before I go too far into this, I do want to tell you that we're going to do something very interesting and different today, something that we don't normally do during the B2B Growth Show. And the reason that I want to do this is because the technology that Navu has, which is basically AI-enabled chat that makes it super easy for buyers to get the information that they need on your site, just like what you think of traditional chat, but it's like powered by AI. It doesn't have a human powering it. We actually want to do a live demo, because one of the things that we discovered, and you'll see this a little bit later on, is that people are always concerned, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard to do. It's not going to give us good answers, etc. And so we're looking for a couple of volunteers. If somebody would love to see what AI chat would look like on your website, and how quickly it can be trained up, could you drop your domain right now, your just website URL of your homepage, in the chat? And what we'll do is we'll pick a couple of those. We'll send them off to Navu while we're doing the show and while John is sharing his great knowledge with us. And then in about 30 or 40 minutes, when we get to that part of the agenda, we should have one of your sites completely ready to go. And so love for you guys somebody that's just curious, what would AI chat look like on my website? Drop your domain, drop your URL of your homepage, and we'll take it from there. It's going to be like a baking show. So you'll give us that. We'll stick it in the oven. We'll come back in 30 or 40 minutes, and we'll have something for you to take a look at. John, anything you want to add to that? Did I cover that correctly?
First of all, I need a lower res camera so you can't see me blushing here. It is, in fact, like a baking show. I do want to, your IT folks aren't going to be upset with you. This is just done in a proxy server. It doesn't actually touch anything on your website. But it's mostly interesting that you'd be surprised sometimes the things that your website answers when you ask it questions. So it is a pretty fun exercise if anybody wants to volunteer.
Yeah, somebody's got to be brave enough. We have enough people on the session today. Somebody's going to be brave enough to drop their URL in, and then we'll just take a look at it at the end and just kind of see what kind of questions, what that experience might look like for you. And so be sure to drop that in. I'm not seeing anybody do it yet, but come on, one of you guys is going to be brave enough. I'd love to get two of you guys to do it for sure. And while we're waiting on you to muster up the courage to drop your domain or URL in, I am going to share my screen because we have a couple of resources I wanted to point out to you guys today. One is literally right off the presses here. Let me pull it up. I'm going to share my screen now. So literally, Lauren, last night about 5 o'clock, did we get this thing finally finished and up on our website? So last month, if you were at our B2B growth show, we had Rand Fishkin on the show. We talked about why clicks are going away and how over 60% of searches now don't result in a click. And of the 40% that do result in a click, like half of those go to sites that Google owns, like YouTube and other sites like that. So us commercially are getting so few sites to visitors to our websites from search engines. And so it's really important that we start thinking about how do we leverage answer engine optimization so that we're showing up in the answers when people ask AI answers or AI overviews or even Chat GPT or Perplexity questions about our business or our website or the industry that we're in. And that's why we put this guide together for you. It's over 60 pages. I don't have time to walk you through all of it, but I will just scroll down here and kind of let you take a look at it. There's checklists and readiness assessments and all kinds of information here that will help you improve your answer engine optimization. And so there is a link in the agenda to this. Be sure to grab a copy. It's not gated. John, I know you're going to talk about gating a little bit later on today. We at Vendy don't believe in gating things. So at the end of the day, this is a super useful resource. Our team spent over 6 weeks putting this thing together for you. I think it's going to be real valuable, and hope you can pick it up.
Paul, we got 2 volunteers over on LinkedIn, so we
awesome. Thank you, folks. That's great. Awesome. The other announcement that I have is that next month we have Jay Swedelson, who is B2B email marketing guru extraordinaire. Always one of our most popular shows that we have every year. We did drop a link to that. The reason I have that in our announcements is that because of Jay's schedule, we're doing this on Tuesday the 11th. Instead of Wednesday. So for those of you veterans that come to our show every month, you know, it's usually the second Wednesday of the month. Next month, it's going to be Tuesday, August the 11th instead of Wednesday, August the 12th. So you can register for that in the agenda as well. And so, okay, those are our announcements. We've got our URLs, John. I think we're good to go. So the other thing that I wanted to cover as you move down in the agenda is to just look at some of the survey data that came out of all of you that took the survey. About 70, I think we had over 200 people registered for today's show, and about 75 of you actually took the survey. So thank you for that. And what I wanted to do is just highlight some of the results that we saw in the survey. So we asked several questions, and then I threw all that into AI and asked AI to put together this beautiful infographic for me. This is one of the things I love about AI. I don't know about you guys, but this is the cool stuff to me. It took about 5 minutes to get this. But John, I'd love your reaction to some of these results. Like, 75 people, they're all B2B marketers. 86% of them said they're not confident that buyers could get the answers to the questions that they have in less than 60 seconds. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's not surprising, right? Especially in the B2B space, there's so many really complicated websites. It sometimes takes me more than 60 seconds to navigate within the super menu on the homepage to which section I'm trying to get to. So it's not necessarily surprising. And in the old world, it's not necessarily a problem. Problem is now it takes 4 or 5 seconds to get an answer when you ask one of the LLMs without even going to the site. And so if it's harder to get people to your website needs to be doing something a little differently if it's taken over 60 seconds to get what you're looking for.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. That's such a good point. If you look down at the bottom too, the next two, the one on the left is really kind of what the audience that took the survey felt buyers are trying to achieve on the website, which you can see, proof that our solution works, product and service details, quick answers to questions, pricing, buying type of information. But then when you look to the right and we see kind of what marketers want, we want leads, we want pipeline, answers to questions is kind of towards the bottom. That seems like a little bit of a paradox to me. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting the way that, so we're talking a lot about, when I talk to B2B marketers out there, about why does your website even exist anymore? And the reason it exists isn't to reveal insights or to answer buyer questions instantly. Specifically, it's largely to serve a function within your business to educate visitors and to get them from wherever they come in to wherever they need to be. And sometimes that's going to be from low education, what do you do, to I now understand what you do. And sometimes it's going to be from a high likelihood to buy to getting them over the finish line. But it's sort of delivering these successful journeys for all the visitors that are coming in. So on the right, you see kind of a pretty big scattering of, well, what am I trying to achieve with my website? But on the left, it's pretty clear. You want to know that the thing that I came to the website for is actually going to suit my needs. Proof that this thing works and will actually serve for it. So I think the why is pretty clear, and the how ends up being a little bit scattered to the wind right now as websites have changed a lot since the advent of LLMs.
Yeah. And, I was going to say this a little bit later on, but as we're thinking about it, just connecting the dots to Rand Fishkin's show last month, we're getting less traffic. Everybody knows we're getting less traffic. But one thing that came out of that session last month is we're getting less traffic, but the traffic that we're winning is more qualified because they've gone out and they've done their research. They've talked to AI, they've talked to peers. Now they're on our website. So that's a high intent visitor. But we have to win the last mile. Just because they're high intent doesn't mean that, our bloated websites with lots of content is going to give them the experience that's going to make them become hand raisers. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. And man, we've got to win that last mile. If we're getting less traffic, conversion rate optimization and improving buyer experiences is super, super critical. Hey, before we move on, I'm going to try to do this in a way that makes it easy for everybody to see. Look at that. I am such a technology genius, Lauren. I can't get over it. Look at how I just shifted that around so well. We actually rehearsed that. That's why I'm laughing. What were you going to say, Lauren?
I said skills.
Skills, mad skills. Yeah, John, I wanted you to react to the bottom here because there was a question in the survey about, AI-enabled chat, and have you tried it? What's keeping you from trying it? And these were the top 4 reasons right here of why people haven't really deployed like an AI-enabled chat yet.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to point out, I run our marketing. I'm a marketing person, not a salesperson. So I am, in fact, the target audience for what I'm talking about largely. And I do find it really funny when fellow marketers are talking about AI giving inaccurate answers as a blocker, because it's very true. We're a bit of control freaks as a collective group in marketing. We like to be able to control the answers and things, and are worried that it's going to provide inaccurate answers. Unfortunately, people are going to be asking AI about your website whether or not you're doing anything. Whether you're going to be asking about it on ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and they're going to be getting answers based on the stuff that you have. So essentially, by not testing it and using it either with AI chat on your website or just by testing it frequently and diligently within the tools themselves and the platforms, you're not actually solving the problem of people getting inaccurate answers. You're just going, la, 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 I can't see the inaccurate answers, so they don't exist. The problem is your website. The problem is the content that you have was built for an old version of the internet that rewarded having a specific answer for every possible permutation of an SEO query that would get somebody to that answer, whereas now AI is reading everything all at once, always, and you might have conflicting information. And so I'm going to get into that kind of stuff. I just find AI giving inaccurate answers is a super serious concern, but it is not solved by just ignoring it entirely. It's made much worse by not having any idea when it's doing those inaccurate answers. And I think that is a bridge that a lot of marketers haven't yet crossed, that they haven't yet fully connected those dots.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, the interesting thing, and I know you're going to get into this a little bit in your presentation, John, but, B2B marketers have always been great content marketers. And you kind of touched on that, right? The answer to B2B marketing is showing up in search engine results. And the way that we do that is we create a lot of content, put it on our website. I remember at one time we were advising clients that a B2B blog needed to have 1,500 to 2,000 words. And imagine every key phrase that we have having 1,500 to 2,000 words connected to it, and probably really good information. But when we're in this chat GPT era, we're used to just asking questions and getting answers, is going to go read a 2,000 word blog to get to the answer that they're looking for. But the point is, I think that's good news, because if we've got a lot of good content on our website, we can probably do something with that. So, and I know you're going to kind of touch on that a little bit later on. But let's jump into kind of the discussion part of the agenda here. And I'm just curious on, we've been talking about AI and improving the user experience, but what's really changing in B2B buyer behavior where AI has been the catalyst? Like, what is your perspective on that, John?
Well, I mean, I think, I don't want to be, I know a lot of your visitors or a lot of your viewers on this show, tune in every month. I don't want to be redundant with what Rand Fishkin was saying, but I think a lot of it is, just got to hammer this point home. People are coming in further down the funnel. Fewer people are coming into your website, but the ones that are coming in are generally more ready to take action, whatever action that might be. They're more ready to go to the next stage, and they have specific concerns, needs, questions. So it's no longer sort of a one-size-fits-all, give everybody something that they're looking for. You're really trying to target these specific folks and move them to the next step. And a lot of that top-of-funnel work is being done before they even touch you. And so I think that is a huge difference, is you still have some degree of control over the way that your brand is presented before it gets to the website, but the portion of your website, the portion of the full buyer journey that is the responsibility of your website is now much smaller, right? And the way that those visitors are now used to engaging is different than it used to be. It used to be normal for you to click 5 or 6 times to find the thing that you were looking for. But now you don't have to in most of the tools that you're using. And even if you're not somebody who's leveraging ChatGPT or Claude Code or Cowork in your day-to-day basis, you're still getting acclimated to the concept of asking a question and getting a response. And I think it's easy to think, oh, well, I'm kind of using this. My buyers aren't really using this, but your buyers aren't Luddites. They're not stuck behind the times. They're trying these tools in their day-to-day life. And what you might find is that it's okay right now to not have, every possible answer on your website easily accessible, but your competitors might be starting to do it, or the ones that are not necessarily direct competitors, but the sites that your customers are used to using on a day-to-day basis are doing it. And now when they come to a website and they're like, well, okay, I need the specific technical spec that I'm looking for, about the tolerance in nanometers of the specific product, right? How am I going to get that information if I can't ask a question? Am I going to find the category page and drill down into the specific post and then find the tech specs and then search on that one to see which specific? It's a lot of steps, and they might not find it and they might give up. And if they give up, they might just go back and ask AI in the first place, at which point we get to the same problem. Mm-hmm. Well, how do I know what it's answering if I'm not even, if I'm not using AI tools on my own site and understanding the answers themselves? So they might end up defaulting back to it if the website isn't able to serve it initially. And that behavior is only going to get more and more pronounced as it becomes more of the industry standard to give a conversational experience.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of really interesting things there. One, buyers are always going to follow the path of least resistance, right? So the path of least resistance 5 years ago might have been, come to my website, read a blog, read 1,000 words of copy, go to my spec page, download the PDF, skim through it, whatever. That was the path of least resistance. But now we're getting trained that we have a new path of least resistance, which is just ask a question and get an answer. And the other thing that you kind of touched on, John, is fair exchange of value. So, a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, pre-AI, whatever, we could expect them to dig a little bit because the value was worth it. But what's happened with AI is that fair exchange of value bar has been shifted way, way down. Like they're expecting a super easy experience and they're not willing to read because that's work. And we're busy, right? We're going to take the path of least resistance. So we need to remember those things.
And if you don't mind, I don't want to jump in and spoil a bunch of stuff that I was planning to talk about in the presentation, but that's just such a...
Too late. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead, John.
The fair exchange, though, I think it's easy to be like, customers don't read anymore and I have all this great content. Problem is you might have all the great content, right? But how many companies were really properly investing into content marketing before? Not enough. Into actually giving their writers enough time to create something valuable that was going to deliver serious value in a fair exchange to their visitors. And second, now that it's been commodified to the extent that it has with AI writing tools, yes, some companies like Vendy are putting out excellent, extremely well thought out pieces of content that are worth your time and effort to read. But a lot more companies are putting out garbage. I mean, a lot of content marketing out there is just AI slop or some version of AI that if I don't know that somebody put 5 minutes into writing it, why am I going to put 5 minutes into reading it? And I think that is something that we need to reckon with, is the value of our content, even the stuff that's done in good faith and with a lot of hard work put in, is diminished by the fact that the reader can't know that it's valuable until they've already put time into it. So they're going to be less willing to put time into it in the first place.
Yeah, boy, that is, I hadn't even thought of it that way, John. That is really good because, yeah, there's an expectation now, I think, going into copy, like, hey, is this AI slop or is this going to be worth my investment in time? And the only way I'm going to find out is to read 2 or 3 paragraphs. And now I've been, am I even going to invest that time? That's a great point. Let's move on to the next question. And we kind of touched on this already, but it's just, why is that last mile so important? And just, for perspective, we're referring to that last mile being when somebody lands on your website to becoming a hand raiser. John, anything you want to add? I know we kind of touched on it already, but really let's drive home the point of why we've got to win those buyers that do come to our website.
Well, I mean, you win the buyers that come to the website because who else are you winning, right? At some point, somebody's going to have to come to your website to convert in almost all circumstances. There are different businesses that don't require that, but largely every customer that you're going to get is going to come through your website at some point, and you're going to have to do something for them. But I think for marketers specifically, I talked about sort of having these control tendencies. We're getting less and less control over our story, just across the internet. More of the things that people are consuming about us are summarized from elsewhere. They're summarized or bullet pointed or however you want to frame it. But it's no longer us having direct control over what our brand is putting out there in the same way that it used to be. The website is that last bastion of control. The website is the last place that you can really say, here is exactly what I want my messaging to be for each visitor at each stage. What do I want to deliver to them? And so this is your chance now to say, I've gotten somebody interested through all of that top of funnel summary stuff, all the stuff away from the website. And now here's my chance to close the deal. What do I want to put forth? So again, it's less of a massive burden because you're not addressing everybody in the same way, but it is more important than ever that you focus on that final mile.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things we've been saying at Vendy for about a year now is that our homepage is no longer our homepage. Our homepages, meaning B2B companies, your homepage is really the feed of our buyers. Like, we need to be spending time doing what we used to do on our website, largely in platforms like LinkedIn or where our buyers are spending time online learning. And that by earning that mind share before market share, we will kind of get that filing space in their brain. And when they have a problem that we can solve, they're going to want to come over to our website and validate. I kind of trust Vendy, or I trust Paul, or I trust John or Navu, but really let me understand how this is going to apply to my specific business. That's when they're going to come to our website. That's when we got to deliver those really specific answers and do it in a way that's better than our competition if we're going to win that buyer.
And again, this is something I have a slide about, but I just want to say it now because it's so relevant, is just when somebody's coming into your website, if they were on your website right now, there's probably 4 pages you would want to show them. If you knew who they were, if you knew who that person was and were over their shoulder telling them read this, there's maybe 4 pieces of content that you'd want that person to read. And maybe there's 10 on the whole website that are really applicable to this person, but there's a ton of other content that was valuable in the summaries and everything else and getting them to that point. So I think what you can think about is there's this dichotomy on your website of content that's for people and content that's for robots. And it's very difficult now to say, oh, this content is for robots, ignore it. But it is a little bit freeing when you realize that not every piece of content that you're using needs to be perfectly formatted and designed and think, how is somebody going to find this? Because if AI is able to pull all of the content at once, you can actually create more content specifically designed for that top of funnel summary stage. and then have a smaller subset that's these are for the human beings that I'm trying to convey my message to. And so there are two different modes of content.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I really love that perspective, because you can train the AI enabled chatbot on really all the information about your business, and then focus your content pages on really giving that amazing experience to your buyers. That's a really interesting perspective. And so why don't we go ahead and transition over to your presentation, John? I want to make sure we got plenty of time to cover those slides. I know you put a lot of slides together, and you may have to bounce through a couple of them. But by the way, guys, we did include a link to John's presentation. You can grab that off the agenda. So all the slides we're going to cover are there for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm excited to talk about this one. It is actually kind of funny. So I think the first time I gave a version of this presentation, this one, I've adapted it a fair amount over time, but the first time I gave a version of this, it was actually at the Industrial Marketing Summit, where Rand Fishkin was the keynote speaker. So he gave the presentation on day one, and then on day two, I gave a presentation to the whole audience, or a large chunk of it, with this. And they are, harmonious. I don't think Rand Fishkin realizes necessarily how harmonious they are, because I've been following him each time. But this is largely about, okay, so you're getting less content to your website, you're getting less traffic to your website, fewer clicks. So what are you doing with that time that you do have with the viewer or with the visitor? And so obviously that's what this is about. I'm not going to basically do what was covered in an hour very well last week in this slide, but AI is changing web traffic patterns. It's something we've already talked about. The actual volume of traffic that you're getting is kind of becoming a vanity metric. As of 2025, it was 80% of searches with an AI overview and without a click to any website. I think that's actually higher now. I've seen some statistics as 85, although I wasn't able to find one to cite for this. What's your website doing, right? And so the old goals are driving as much traffic as possible, ranking on the first page, and then you gate, right? This is something we talked about. You gate your PDFs and lead capture forms. Somebody decides that's a fair exchange of value because they're not going to be able to get that information they're looking for elsewhere. So they give you some information. You use that to sell them. Everybody knows the deal. The problem is that no longer is the sole source of truth anymore. Your website now has to be providing a value to folks that they can't get elsewhere. And so if you're gating content, creating that friction that Paul likes to talk about along the way, you're actually just giving people off-ramps. You're giving people exit opportunities when you're really trying to deliver what they're looking for. I mean, the website is designed to deliver what they're looking for. And when you stop them in the process of them trying to find it, all you're really doing is encouraging them to find it from somewhere else. So the right goals are helping those serious buyers making confident decisions, reducing friction for high intent visitors, and surfacing the right information at the right moment. We talk a lot about what's sort of the metric that you would want to really have as a KPI if you could. And it's successful sessions. If you were able to measure, did this person get what they were looking for? Is that a successful session? If you were able to get that information every time, I think that would be the best KPI for the website, at least in my view.
I love that. That's awesome. Yep.
So focusing on the addressable audience, 75% of B2B buyers prefer a rep-free sales experience, according to Gartner. That goes against how most of us sell, right? Obviously, you're not going to be able to change your business from having reps to having no reps and be like, well, it's because people wanted it. But you can give them a longer time before they're willing to, before they have to speak to one. And I think the longer that they're able to go on a self-serve capability, the more it allows them to bridge that gap themselves, to create that level of trust that says, this is going to be worth my time to now be sold to. Because being sold to, I mean, we're all familiar. It's not just, okay, fine, I consent to getting this information one time. You're basically saying, I'm going to get emailed constantly. I'm going to get emailed, maybe called. I'll be getting PDFs and everything. It is a real hassle when I enter my email address on something, knowing that I am about to have to be clicking unsubscribe for 2 months on things that I thought I'd already unsubscribed from. And again, if you're one of the companies that engages in good behavior, that's excellent. But because so many others are engaging in, let's say, more ethically dubious practices, and you can't differentiate until you found out, you're still paying the price for those other companies not necessarily respecting the time of the people that are entering those forms. So the longer that you can allow them to fulfill their needs on the site without talking to sales, the better, and the more likely it makes for a productive sales conversation. I'm going to keep going. This one, it's going to break Paul's heart. It breaks a lot of people's heart. It breaks my heart a little bit. But content marketing as we know it is largely dead. And this is what I was talking about with the, it's partially what I was talking about Just the tiniest whimper of no there. It's the proliferation of AI content that's no longer good, the lack of trust that ensues among people that are considering whether or not to consume your content, as well as sort of the summarizing of content on an AI chat on the LLMs themselves, rather than having to read it on your site. And these things are combining to basically change entirely what content marketing is. If it's not dead, it's now totally different than how it had been. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing that we're no longer having to be content mills churning out every possible SEO keyword and relating it somehow back to our business. What this means is you can actually have a smaller subset of content on your website. As long as that content is accurate, you're still now putting out even more content into the world when people are asking summaries of that information and getting information based on the stuff that you've put out. So you now are controlling a much smaller pool of information that can be summarized and applied in all of those various ways that it already was. It's just no longer your responsibility to do it yourself, which I think does present quite an opportunity. But the way, and I touched on this a minute ago, the way that AI is reading your content is not the same way that SEO was. It's not, I'm looking for this information and here's a big post that touches on this information in one paragraph and one sub bullet here, and I'm going to use that. Unfortunately, if you have content on your website from today that's really good and content from 2015 that you're not sure what it says anymore, but it's certainly not up to date, AI is reading both of those at the same time for the most part.
And probably can't tell the difference between the two, right? It's like, is the new stuff better or more real or more factual than the old stuff?
That's right. But unfortunately, it can tell when they conflict. It can tell when post one says one thing and post two says the other. And it's not going to say, well, post two is more recent, I'm going to pick that. So it does a little bit of that to a degree. But largely it's going to say, this website is giving me conflicting information about this query, so I'm not going to use it to answer this query. And so that's a really important thing, is you were not punished for having conflicting information in the old world. That was not necessarily a big problem in your SEO space, because if you have content that's only going to be referenced on those specific queries on SEO that people aren't finding otherwise, then it doesn't matter if it says something out of date if people aren't finding it. It's now all being used all the time. And so now that level of conflicting information is a problem that you need to address. SEO and GEO, I'm going to largely skip over this one. There are bigger experts on this space than me. I think the main thing to remember is you're going from one black box to a different black box that operates in a different way. It's still somewhat challenging to understand what the best practices are. And there are people that do know a lot, and there are people that claim to know a lot, but they perform differently. They behave differently. And your SEO optimizations are still important, but they're not the same thing as GEO optimizations.
Yeah, and I'm just going to do a quick plug on our guide. We call there's so many acronyms for what GEO is, or AEO, or LMO. We call it at Vendi AEO, but that's the guide that I talked about at the beginning of the show. That 60-page guide basically walks through everything that John is talking about here, but really, John, very much aligns with what you said on the previous slide. It's about getting your information and disseminating in all these places in a factual way, so that as AI is out there learning about your business or learning about your point of view, it's not just picking it up from your website. It's picking it up from places where you've dropped seeds or other people have talked about you in a consistent way.
That's right. And agentic engine optimization, generative engine optimization, we'll eventually settle on a term here. But yes, same thing here. Just something I touched on, less content is better. So better content is important. Having less content is also important. It's not that you need to create less. It's actually that you should audit what you have and make sure that you're removing stuff that no longer is applicable. And if you can't think of why this is a particularly useful piece of content on your website, you should probably now opt to removing it, whereas before you should have opted to keeping it. And that's a huge distinction with the way that we manage our content. And so, structuring for retrieval, these are things that I was talking about. But it's important to remember that AI models do penalize brand authority when there's inconsistent or contradictory information across the website. And if you have content from 2015 that's still actively accessible on your website, I guarantee you have conflicting or contradictory information on your website. So gated content. This one I really wanted to get into. I know, Paul, you and I see Vendi, we've talked about this a lot, see very much eye to eye on this. But gated content is this really interesting thing where it's, in many ways, it was the point for a lot of these websites, it was what was the point of your website? Well, it was to get people to give me their email address. And this is how I did it, was the big thing. This was the carrot that I was dangling to fulfill my KPIs, which is how I justify my job. Because for some reason, marketers are always justifying the existence of our jobs. But the gated content stuff is now actually, it's not just no longer as valuable. It's actually quite a negative, because essentially, if your website isn't the sole source of truth, where the only place people get information about what they're looking for anymore, well, now by gating content, you're just making your website less useful and making them want to fall back to the other more useful options that you're describing. And so if I can answer a question by just typing in ChatGPT into my browser and asking the same question without having to go through the gating, all I'm going to do is find a source that's not you. And now I'm just preventing my information that I spent a lot of time creating from actually being used by somebody who wanted to use it, right? Somebody has said, I want this information. And now you're saying, too bad. Give me this thing that you're not sure you're going to give me. And if you drop off, that's tough. And they no longer feel like that same pull that they have to do this. So by ungating things like educational guides and application notes, you're making it much more likely that that person is going to have a successful session. And I think one thing that we get backwards as marketers a lot is we kind of put the cart before the horse around getting that information so that we can sell to them, right? But if you get that information before they find out if they are a good prospect, we're worried that we're going to lose them, that they're not going to come through. But if they get that information and decide that they're not a good prospect, do you think that that would have gone differently if they talked to sales or if they talked to support? Like, that person is just disqualifying without wasting anybody's time. Yes, it's one fewer KPI for you, which obviously can be a challenging thing for a marketer to build a strategy around. But it's actually saving your sales team or your support team or your SME's time by not forcing that information, not that disqualification onto them, but by disqualifying them earlier on in the process. And every single customer that you get is going to give you their email address at some point along the way. They're going to educate themselves and they're going to give you their email address. It doesn't matter what order they do it in. And we are really afraid of not getting that email address when we otherwise could. But that's just kicking the can to some other department in the organization and wasting everybody's time and disqualifying and preventing some people that would be good leads from finding out that they were good leads in the first place because they would have bounced.
So hey, John, I've got two quick proof points I want to drive home here. One, HubSpot invented the term inbound 20-something years ago, and it was all about content marketing, driving people to your website, putting a form in front of your best content to generate leads. Like, they invented that 25 years ago. They just changed the name of their conference, which has been called Inbound for however long it's been, to Unbound. And the reason they changed it to Unbound is exactly what you're talking about. And another key point to just really drive this home, Chuck Moxley, who was a CMO at a company, Blue Triangle or something like that. Sorry, I can't remember. But I specifically had him on the show last year because he basically took this experiment with the CEO's permission and ungated everything. So they took all of their content, turned it into web visible information. I think even converted it from PDFs to HTML. And at the end, you could download the information as a PDF, or you could talk to a sales rep if you were interested in learning more. Here's the crazy thing. They ungated everything, but they put the call to action at the end of their information. They actually generated more leads after they ungated everything than what they were getting before they had the gate, for exactly the reasons you're talking about, John.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that probably was best practice several years ago without us all realizing it. And now it's even more so, because if you're gating content, you're also preventing the LLMs from reading it too, which is preventing you from getting some of your best content out there for the top of funnel folks who might otherwise become interested and come to the website. So it's kind of a double whammy. I do want to keep going. Chatbots. This is what we do. This is kind of part of the point here, but it's not the only way. There's also things like AI powered search functionality. But I do want to talk about chatbots a little bit because they don't suck anymore. And this is one of those things that people are like, chatbots. Yeah, I hate them. I hate them to run them. I hate them to use them. They're not good. That's basically the impression that everybody's had for a long, long time. And that's beginning to change now that we're all engaging with chatbots in our day-to-day lives, even if we don't think of them as such, with AI solutions, even your personal assistants on your phone. But the problems with chatbots were that they were scripted. They had rigid logic trees. If I think of a chatbot from before, it's if-then statements, which are hugely a pain in the butt to manage, to implement the first time. And even if you get it right, then every time you update your website or update your story, you have to change every if-then statement accordingly. And if you have one thing wrong, or if it starts to not go so well, now it's a terrible user experience on top of that. So they were limited in what they could do in the best of times. They were a ton of work to set up and maintain. And then they were a ton of work to keep up to date with all of your existing content as your story changed. So people just ignored them. And so then you're like, well, if people are ignoring them, then why am I even doing all of this work in the first place? And that's, of course, completely totally changed over the last couple of years. LLMs are just a natural, perfect fit for this. And what it does is, instead of requiring you to determine every possible question that the people are going to ask on your website, which you can't, they're going to ask questions that you never would have thought of. Take it from somebody who sees just a ton of questions across a ton of different industries. You would be astonished at the things people think to ask. Some of it is awful. Some of it is extremely insightful. And you think, wow, why didn't I think of that? But you can't read the minds of your visitors, particularly before you have any idea of what they would actually ask given free rein. And that's obviously a perfect fit for LLMs, because it's taking the pool of information that's on your website and answering questions accordingly. So 87% of software buyers say chatbots are changing how they research, with 50% now starting their buyer journey in an AI chatbot. So that's B2B software. That's obviously going to be a little more in the forward-minded approach. If you're a B2B software company, you should be aware of this. If you're not, you should be aware that's the direction things are moving. Is that people are starting their buying journeys within an AI chatbot context, and changing how they research accordingly. And it can even do things like personalization that would otherwise have been pretty cumbersome, around tailoring the answers to the specific person that's on the website. And there's a lot of interesting ways to handle this, but the key thing is that customers are expecting this conversation. And, we work with a lot of technical engineering type of companies, engineering, manufacturing, wholesale, distribution, because it's a natural fit for this, because they have technical questions. And the more complex your website is, the more tempting it can be as marketers to be like, this isn't for me, right? This isn't going to work for me. But it's actually the opposite, where those are the ones that are going to benefit the most from having something like this, because the customers have the biggest burden on your website to find the thing to create a successful session. They have the hardest path to a successful session if your website is more complex. So they want to be asking the questions themselves and saying, hey, this is an example I've used many times. One of our customers sells things like bridges and pipes and tunnels. And as an example, they were running a stormwater filtration campaign, CPC campaign, where somebody came in, paid a lot of money for that click. They came into the website, landed on this beautiful bespoke stormwater filtration webpage. And the first question they asked was, what stormwater filtration solutions do you have? Which, of course, is moderately frustrating, because it's literally the entire page that we're on. That's just read the page, but fine. And it answers, here are the three. And it says, well, I'm a farmer. Which one of those is right for me? And it answers, this one's probably the most applicable for you. And then it starts to get into the nitty gritty. And that user journey, this is not an exaggeration, was 10 questions, where the 9th question was, and forgive me that this is a little bit rehearsed, but I've told this story a lot of times. The 9th question was, how many cubic feet per second can the jellyfish stormwater filtration system process? And it obviously is able to pull that information from page 183 of a PDF somewhere. And the 10th question was, how do I talk to sales? Right. And that is like the classic journey, where that customer is having a conversation as if it were with sales or an SME, getting information they wouldn't have otherwise gotten, and then in the end still wanting to talk to sales to get to the next step, having qualified themselves along in the process. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, is it would be easy for a website like that to think, my website is complicated, AI is complicated, this is too much, I don't even want to start this process. But what it ends up with is radical simplicity. What it ends up with is this person no longer has to search. The burden is no longer on them. And I no longer have to think about how they're going to find what they're doing. I just let loose, here are all of the answers that are trained on a specific subset of my own content, without having to worry about how it's going to be leveraged.
Gosh, it goes right back to what we talked about at the beginning, fair exchange of value. I just want the answer. I landed on a page about the topic, but I didn't even want to read the words. I just wanted to get to the answers as quickly as I could. I mean, that's amazing, but that's what's happening with our buyers today.
It is maddening. How many times as marketers have we looked at a landing page that we spent a lot of time on, and then looked within Google and been like, why are there so many single page bounces that nobody even read anything, that nobody even like, this is only for people who are clearly the right fit for this content. And even then, and why do they click on the homepage next? Like, I have 6 links that are relevant to this, and then they just click on the homepage, and then they get lost, and then they bounce, and then I get sad.
That's right.
And it just solves that. I mean, it just really, when your website is a conversational engine, it just solves that.
Hey, we have 10 minutes left. Do we want to move to the demo, or
I'm going to power through the last? It's real quick.
Okay, I'm just doing your normal time check.
Thank you. So, important to know, it's got to match your use case. What we're talking about is largely in the marketing user education side. Some websites are going to want something that's more of a AI SDR. That's like what Qualified does. It's more of a sales oriented version of chat that's trying to push people that final, not even mile, the final 100 yards to conversion. Some are more like on support. Some are more like on post sale or subject matter experts. There's a lot of different solutions. And the best solution is the one that you're actually going to use, right? So if you're in the HubSpot ecosystem, the HubSpot Breeze agent might be the solution for you. There's a lot of other ones like us that will integrate natively into HubSpot, but you might want to be in Zendesk as an example. You might be tailored toward the Zendesk ecosystem, and it makes sense. You don't want to learn other platforms. You're only going to use the one that you actually use, because otherwise it's a shiny toy that you'll spend 2 weeks on, and then you'll forget about, and you will fail to maintain, and it'll get canceled at the next evaluation. So you want something that's actually straightforward, doesn't require a PhD, that you have the team to support. And I think that's a really important one. Is some of these enterprise level solutions are so capable. They're so capable, but you have to change your structures to accommodate them. And so if you're a company that can do that, that's great, do that. But if you're not, you might be wanting to look at one of the more turnkey solutions. So one of the things that we do, but there's also others out there as well. Something like Chatbase is a good one, but they do more for the tech side. So if this belongs in your tech department and you want to run something a little more custom, you can build it out with them. There's a lot. I don't claim to be the only game in town. You want it to integrate into your existing stack. That's obvious. And you want to understand your audience in real time. So one of the most important things is, what questions will people ask if they have all of the things available to ask? You won't know the answer to that until you get to it. You'll see what objections and concerns are being created before they get to a deal. And you'll see the way that your AI is answered, that the LLMs are answering questions about your website, even when it's not on your website. Because what you're seeing when we're training on your content, and answering questions, that's all the information that the LLMs are going to get as well. So it's a bit of a window of visibility into how your content is being structured so that the robots can read it, not just on your own website, but beyond. And so there's a lot of valuable insights and understanding when you leverage a tool like an AI chatbot or an AI search solution that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And I'm just going to pull to the end here so I can show the little demo. But it's no longer a brochure. And my question that I like to end with is the one that Paul asked in the very beginning of the survey. Could a high intent buyer get the answers that they need on your website in under 60 seconds without talking to a salesperson? Because they no longer need your website to get answers, or at least they don't feel like they do. So if they're not able to use your website to get those answers, they're just not going to use your website. All right. So that's the presentation.
Yeah. Hey, John, while you're pulling up the demo, I'm just going to hit on something you covered really fast at the end. It was probably the biggest surprise to us when we started using Navu on our website was the intelligence that we gather on what people actually ask of our website. So we wanted to give people answers in less than 10, 60 seconds. But now we know, oh my gosh, I would have never thought that somebody was going to ask that question. And so we can make sure that we have those answers. So it's like the best voice of the customer instant research that you could possibly ever do, because they're literally on your website asking the question, and you've given them a platform to do that. And so that intelligence is just incredibly valuable. Also, we're a HubSpot Platinum partner. And so we love Breeze, but Breeze for this purpose is not, that's more of a customer service type chat. We love yours because it's more of, for people that have invested heavily in content marketing, it's such a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And Breeze is a very capable thing that can do a lot, but we work with a ton of HubSpot customers. We're trying to be more of the turnkey. It just works. It's not going to do every possible thing, but it is going to push all of that information into your HubSpot CRM and get that information in return with our bidirectional integration. So if you are from Next Up, congratulations. We picked yours for the demo when people submitted them.
Thank you for volunteering.
This does get to my point, though. We just try to be the really, really easy one. We just want to be something that is one line of code that adds to your website and is able to leverage only the content that's on your website or stuff that you add manually. So it's an index of content that you control. It won't pull from the broader internet, and it goes on very simply. This is obviously a demo that was mocked up within, I guess, 20 minutes or so. But you can actually start answering questions on your own website within 1 minute if you just go enter your domain on the Nauvoo website. But for next up, we have an AI-generated question here, which workshop best helps leaders navigate polarizing workplace conversations. But I'm just going to take it with the prompt here and say, what do you do? So this is only going to answer based on the content within the Next Up website, which obviously has a fair amount. So we provide leadership development, networking, corporate partnerships, and resources. You can see it's citing its sources. So it provides citations, 25 voices, 25 years with Kimberly Betts, and becoming a member of Next Up. How do I get started? As an example. Okay. These are clickable. Within the demo context, I'm not going to be clicking through on the citations, and the citations will improve as we've indexed the entirety of the website. But to get started with Next Up, you can choose the path that best fits your professional needs, join as an individual, check for corporate partnerships, attend an event, or volunteer. You can see where it got that information. So here's becoming a member of this group, the membership help desk. And then I'm going to ask, who's going to win the World Cup? Because I am very curious and I'm very excited about today's game and then potentially the final. And I want to know who's going to win the World Cup. But sadly, Next Up is not able to tell me that. I'm only able to answer questions about the company and what's on the website. And I'm going to give this a big thumbs down because I'm sad about it. And the point of all of this is now we can see within the context of the portal, here's every question that's been asked on the site. You see these were a couple training questions that we put in before. And here's this person from San Francisco, California, that asked, what do you do? How do I get started? And who's going to win the World Cup? This is all searchable. So World Cup only has this one answer. It's all filterable. So I want only ones that somebody left a thumbs down on. I have to exclude that. That's fine. Thumbs down. I'm going to exclude all the thumbs downs in a moment here. And then I'm going to go to tracking and I'm going to see here's every user journey. The Sunnyvale ones and the Canada ones are from when we were setting it up over the course of this. The San Francisco one is me. It has all the pages I've been to, everything I've done. And when I click this contact button, it will show you the information within HubSpot that I've submitted. So any form fills and that sort of things. And what's really cool is obviously you control this is the place where you actually control the LLMs. So what you're seeing is basically a default of what the LLMs are able to see. But you're also able to provide your own details, levels of control. And so we're going to call this one partners. This is when applicable when someone asks about Next Up's partners. And in plain English, you describe what you want it to do. Explain to the user that Vendy is our favorite partner. Sorry, Next Up, if that's not true, you can change this, of course. Let me go back to here and say, which partners do you work with? That's an example. And you can see, Next Up works with a variety. We're proud to collaborate with organizations that share a commitment to leadership development and workplace equity. Please note that Vendy is our favorite partner. And I'll be like,
yay!
Not a skill that you would actually have. We have this in preview only mode. You can also disable it or delete it. There's a much longer version of this demo that I would normally give, but I just wanted to show off. Essentially, what we're doing is we're taking an index that you control, that you can add things to and remove things to. It starts off by reading the sitemaps, but then it can also be customly configured to however you want it. It can read databases. It can hook into product catalogs and things. We're only answering questions based on that. It won't answer about the World Cup. It won't answer about your competitors unless you have information about your competitors. And then you can control the fine-grained answers based on your specific rules that you want to put in place. Common ones are if somebody asks to talk to sales, give them custom instructions or ask them follow-up questions to determine which salesperson would be the right one for them. So it's basically leveraging all this stuff we're talking about of delivering these answers quickly and understanding how the robots are reading your website and how understanding LLMs are going to answer questions for you while also maintaining that level of control that we marketers really pride ourselves on without making it some massive project. So that is the shortest version of the demo I think I've ever attempted to do. I may have skipped something. But
great job, John. Yeah, great job. I know we're getting close to time too, but I wanted to show you guys, we have this on our website too. In John's demo, you saw kind of the basic out of the box version of the chat bar, but you can add CSS and make it look however you want on our website. So this is what it looks like on our website. One of the things that I love about it is, as a user, just like when you have a chat on your Chat GPT or Claude, it runs a history of your previous chats. So what you're seeing here as I scroll down are all the different conversations that I personally have had with the website through Navu. And so your user experience would be that way as well. That's another cool thing that I really like about it, because especially if I'm in kind of evaluation mode, I might pop back to somebody's website multiple times. And if I can see that string of information and cited resources, that's kind of a helpful thing. And so, hey, John, great job today. Really enjoyed having you as usual. You'll probably be our first ever four-peat next year if I can talk you back into joining us. But hopefully this was really helpful. I think the key takeaway is we've got to remove friction. We're getting less traffic to our websites. What can we do to make it super easy for them? John, I loved your new KPI, which is, was that a successful session for the buyer? That really needs to be our focus moving forward. And so, John, thank you again for being here. Grab that agenda. It's got links to things on John's website. Obviously, links to our AEO guide that we just showed you. If you're interested in a Navu demo, you can DM me or drop something in the chat here, or reach out to Navu directly. It's literally, you saw how fast you can get a demo up and running. They would love to show you how that works. We can help you with that if you need help. But we'll see you guys next month. Thank you again. John, appreciate you very much. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.